Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Khalil Doheny, and I'm Director of Content Marketing at DNA. Today, we have Charles from AtomBeam. Charles, how are you doing today?
Good, good, Khalil. How are you?
Doing great, doing great. Charles, you want to introduce our guest here today?
By all means. So this is Boris Becker. He's retired Rear Admiral who was, and we'll talk about his background a little more, but the command he held, the last one he held, was exactly the kind of thing that AtomBeam really can benefit from. And he's going to be doing a dive into that to talk about it in some detail.
Awesome. Charles, welcome. Is there anything you wanted to, tell the audience about?
Well, I wanted to mention, because it's on everybody's mind who's on this, I'm sure, about the start engine race.
Yep.
So this webinar is really about, our, quick update on the company, and then talking about our applications to Navy programs. But an awful lot of people are wondering about the start engine race, which I think everybody knows maxed out like in a matter of like 24, 48 hours. It was like boom, and it went from like 800 or something to 2 million. And the wait list is significant. So what we are doing now is working with Start Engine. There's a decent chance that we can expand the size of the round with an amendment with the SEC, which would allow us to raise roughly another million. The other thing everyone should know, and that the quick timing on that is probably we can get the filing done sometime in next week, probably late week. I'm not really sure quite how long it would be before it's effective, but it should be pretty quickly after that, a couple of days. So look for that. I think there's a probable that we'll get that done. Then the other thing to know is we are looking at potentially what's called a Reg A plus raise, which wouldn't happen until Q1 sometime next year because it takes a while. But it doesn't have the limitations that the current kind of raise, a Reg CF raise, has. But Start Engine's very keen on it. They see us as a company that has some pretty good opportunities for their constituency. And so as a result, we are looking into that in some detail right now and doing some work on it. So even if it doesn't work out for anyone in the current raise, please be aware that it's probably, I can't guarantee anything, but it's a reasonably good chance that we'll go back out and do a Reg A plus sometime. Probably my guess is it probably wouldn't be till February, March, some time frame like that, just because it takes a while. It's much more involved. There's a lot of work you have to do with regulatory stuff. But anyway, that's the plan. So everybody should know that's where we are.
Awesome. Well, Charles, with that being said, let's just dive straight into it.
Yeah, by all means. So I'm gonna, as usual, have a deck to talk through, and I will start it now. And okay, so really quickly on Admiral Becker. This is his official photo, and so just really quickly on him. So I'll have him talk a little about it, but just really quickly, the command I was talking about is called NAVWAR. It's the Naval Information Warfare Systems Warfare. This is wrong. It's Naval Information Warfare Systems Command. Right. Sorry about that. So it's a huge command, 11,000 people, and they're in charge of all the systems, including acquisitions of systems for the Navy that are involved in communications, intelligence, and so forth. So do you want to talk a little, please, about NAVWAR and, obviously we're going to go into some detail later, just so everybody knows the structure here. But if Boris hasn't had a chance to talk yet, so.
Thanks, Charles, for that introduction. And you got to be careful, because when you introduce a naval aviator to a crowd and tell them he can talk for a while, it might be a while. They keep talking. Thanks very much for the chance to be here and for the chance to be part of the AtomBeam team. I think what you have here is really quite a remarkable capability, one which I know I would have looked for and wanted to employ in multiple mission areas throughout my commands, but most recently as the program executive officer for all the command and control and communications, computers, and the intelligence systems for the Navy, as well as the program executive officer for space systems, building the Navy satellites and the satellites Navy built for the Department of Defense use. And then, as you pointed out in my last command, as the Naval Information Warfare SysCom, try to explain that once to people what NAVWAR did. It's not like NAVC that builds ships and submarines, or NAVAIR that builds airplanes and missiles. I think my wife, though, said it best when she said, well, there's Bed, Bath, and Beyond. You guys are the Beyond department of the Navy.
Right.
And I think that's a great fit for what AtomBeam is.
Well said, yeah.
It really is the beyond stuff of what we can provide for multiple mission sets.
Well, thanks. Yeah. And we're going to hear some specifics about why it's such a good fit for us to have Admiral Becker with us. But to touch on some other key personnel adds. So thanks to our capital raising activities, and a big chunk of that is what we're doing thanks to everyone here on this in the crowdfunding and Start Engine. Anyway, so one of the big needs we've had for a while is a CFO. And we don't need a full-time guy. And so we were able to, luckily, get the services of Rajiv Bhagat, who's very experienced guy, lots of Silicon Valley experience, been involved in some big capital raisings and big venture funds and all that. And so he's aboard now, and he's working away, and I'm working him hard. So that is really helpful. Another big ad. So Julian was responsible for the program that we were working on at Inmarsat, and then of course it became Viasat when Viasat purchased Inmarsat. So he was promoted from VP of Products, which is the guys in between sales and marketing and the people building the products, to say this is what the product should do, and here's the key things you need to think about, and the functionalities and everything. So designing the sort of strategic pieces of the product. And Julian, we managed to talk him into taking a shot at working with us. So he, despite his offer to stay, decided to come and become our VP of Products. So he's super highly regarded. And for anyone who was on the last webinar with Jat Branch, she was the one who brought Julian into Inmarsat, and she regards him super highly. So anyone who watched that one knows Chad is a pretty formidable and high level person, and it takes you got to be a player to make it in her book, and he does. So quick update on the company. We're not going to go into tons of detail here, but because we're going to focus on on the Navy stuff. But just so everybody understands, so we are really embarking now on building the company, and that means more than anything else, people. And, you know, as the venture guys say, and, you know, as the guy who was recommending us, Luke Longo, was saying, the most important thing you got is people. And most VCs would say they'd rather invest in a company with mediocre product and great people than mediocre people and great product. And so, but I think it's very possible we could have both. So, so the big focus here that we've got right now is getting the revenue rolling. We have revenue rolling on the DoD side, and I think that is actually looking really good to increase significantly. But we also really need to focus on building our commercial revenue. And as I've been saying for a while, our product in early beta form is coming out this month. And we expect that we're going to be in a position in which we can generate some real revenue out of it, starting, you know, probably late Q1 and Q2, realistically, because people need to test it first. But there's a lot of good things happening on that end of things. And so just to talk really broadly here, just briefly. So, you know, what are the pieces here that you need in order to build value in a company like ours, a technology company? So one is the proprietary IP. We have, I know it's like, it's hard to keep the count because we keep doing it, but we have 34 issued and allowed patents, and we now have, I think it's 25 pending patents. And so we are still moving and blowing and going on that. Now there's capital, which the people here have been a significant help in. You can't hire people, you can't file patents, you can't do anything unless you have money. And saleable products. So that's been really the focus, to move to sort of like a product that is too hard to use to one that's really easy to use. That's what we're doing more than anything else. Partnerships. You know, we're focused on, I know everybody knows we got a bunch of these, and the big thing is to make them productive. And the most productive one is the Viasat one, but there's others out there, NAWS, but there's others out there that are really big time potential, and we need to work them harder. And then getting access to the market, that is getting the ability to get in front of people at the high level. There's some terrific stuff we have going on there right now. And where are we in this whole thing? Well, build a basic product, and we got the funding from DoD to take it to the next step. We, as I think everyone knows, this year we picked up 2 pretty good sized contracts, $1.2 million contracts, and we were able to raise more money on it. And because we were able to get both those things going, and now we've got real revenue and everything, that now we can hire some people. So in those, we hire the people and they can do the productization, and they can start selling it and set up the partnerships and all that stuff. So that's about where we are. I think everyone's going to see here as we go how all of this evolves into something that is a, you know, we aren't there yet, but everybody can look and see where we're going and how it's going, and see this could be really something. So, so just quickly on the org plan. So, you know, it's still in flux, but we are working on sort of like really making it more of an organization with people, with roles, with responsibilities. Because when you're just a startup and you're just kind of like getting things organized, you're running around, everybody does everything, right? So that is okay for a while, but you know, if you compare my expertise in product management to Julian's, well, you aren't going to get very far. You know, I mean, it's like lots, not much. So any rate, so that's the deal. We really need to build this organization, and we're making some really good progress in doing that. So, and now I'll talk quickly about the product. So, big thing is the instantiation. So, yeah, we have it in software. You can take the software, an engineer can load it, and they could do all their stuff with it and everything, which is fine, you know, for a lot of things. If you're Cisco or you're HPE or something, then yeah, they can take that and do things with it. But they're going to find it a lot easier, better, faster, cheaper to buy a chip and stick the chip on their board and send the data to the cloud. How do you do that? Well, that has to be what we're doing. And so our big focus is in terms of product management, product development, is instantiating it into places where it can be easy. And that really means put it on a chip, and now it can go on a logic board or something and put it into the cloud. And so that way I pick up my phone and bingo, you know, it's got a chip in it. The chip sends the data to the cloud and to another phone or whatever it is, and everything's faster, better, cheaper, et cetera, and more secure. So that's the key thing for us. So so at any rate, so just really quickly on sort of the cloud piece of what I was just talking about. So the key things here are this is the first thing. I mean, we are working on the FPGA, the putting it on a chip part piece too, but number one is, and the hardest thing to do at this stage is put it into the cloud. And so it's getting built into the cloud right now. And that's what gets released this month. They're in a testing of it right now. Why do that? Well, it's like now software as a service, right? And so instead of some engineer having to code it in and put it in their gadget and stuff, instead it goes out from the cloud into your gadget in what's called a container. And now that gadget has, among other software, AtomBeam built in. And the cloud already knows how to communicate with it. And so now everything is quicker and faster and better and everything. So that's, you know, and eventually, yeah, then it'll be like, okay, put it on a chip. And then you have it on the chip. And now, you know, not just going to the cloud, but you can talk between devices easily. And this is a thing of big time interest to the Air Force, and Boris can talk some about how the Navy would look at it too, but they have a big focus on FPGAs, and particularly the people in the Air Force Research Laboratory that are sponsoring one of our projects with DoD, and interested in sponsoring more. So as I said, it's a key to mass scale. This is the kind of thing where when you get it to be mature, it goes into something called an ASIC, an application-specific integrated circuit. And these are hardwired little chips, and they only do one thing, and they're really, really efficient, and they're really, really cheap. And so you could, and once that ASIC is there and built, you can stick it on anybody's logic board, and everybody's got it. And you can do it times billions. And that's eventually where we get to. But you got to walk before you can run, and the FPGA is the walk. But it's so far going really well. Good brisk pace. So this is a quick overview of kind of our different products, where we are and how it goes and so forth. So first on compaction, that's our core product that, you know, we started with. And so we are releasing the beta this month, and the formal full release we expect to have out in this sort of combined product we're working on tightly with Viasat right now. They and AWS and us and a company in Singapore with hardware are all working hand in hand to create this joint product that, you know, everybody can just use. And instead of having to go through a lot of mucking around with, all right, this is the right terminal and here's the right, you should use Iridium or you should use Viasat, you should whatever, and it goes to a cloud. Now you got to build in a cloud. Everything's done. You just say, okay, yeah, I'll take it. And then boom, you just get a terminal, take it out of the box and you're ready to go. It's a big project, hard. But the cool thing is we piggyback on that to not only be in that product, but we also get their support, their effort, and so forth to make our SaaS work. Because the SaaS will work for everything. And the cool thing is, when AWS slows down or doesn't do something, then I've got a big company jumping on them, not just us. So, and then, and I had a question the other day about the searchability. So I think I've mentioned to everybody in different contexts that one of the most important things that compaction can do is when the data is at rest, that is to say, it's sitting in a data center, it's stored in a hard drive, it's somewhere. Unlike compressed data, you can search it and you can randomly access it. The potential for that with these giant data lakes full of data that is really hard to access, really hard to do anything with, it makes it all transparent. It changes the world. And so, but we have done some work and we have an early prototype, but to make it sophisticated enough that we could show it to somebody, that's going to be some more work. And so, first things first, we got to get our product out there in the SaaS, but this is, in my view, next up. And then quickly on the other things, the FPGA prototype, we have a proposal into the Air Force to follow up on a phase 1 we did this year with them. We will hear sometime January, February on whether or not we get it. If we do, it's $1.2 million, and it's working with the Air Force Research Laboratory, who are lobbying in the background, we think, to get it awarded because they really want it. And so if we can really push this out, we can push this pretty fast, I think. I mean, so that they can have a prototype that is pretty much ready to go to phase 3 by the end of the year. Phase 3, that's when you get to 10 million, 20 million kinds of numbers, because they want to see, boom, how do I get this out there? And this is a way of getting compaction and NERCOM into things quickly. So then on to NERCOM. So NERCOM is, as I think a lot of folks, most folks know, but I'll mention how it works. So it's an AI that retrofits on an existing, pretty much any image compression. So it just kind of latches on and amplifies the reduction capability of that product. And so now with this, what we've seen so far is so we're working with the Air Force Research Lab on this right now. Normally they get about 30-to-1 reduction for the kind of images that they're focused on in this particular project, which is synthetic aperture radar images, or images that are created by a satellite or an airplane flying over something and effectively pinging the ground and building an image like doing that. And so, but they're big and they're like 200 meg each. And so how do you make it small enough that you can send a lot of these becomes the question. And so they use a reduction now that gets them about 30-to-1. But with our super duper NERCOM, they get 62-to-1. And we can probably get even better. So it's something we're working on diligently now, and we're getting pushed to hurry up. As we are with the other phase 2 contract that we have with the Air Force, which actually Boris has been helpful already in talking to the guy who's the manager of that, the technical point of contact, who's very keen on this thing and has specific uses that he really wants to apply to. So last thing I'll mention is neural compaction. So, I keep calling things neural compaction, but this one is early stage, but it's really cool. And what it does is it's an AI that's lossless, like compaction is, unlike an image compression, but it's lossless, but it gets even more reduction. The downside is it doesn't have searchability, it doesn't add to security, and it's slow. It's not a substitute, to be clear, for compaction. It's using a neural net. It's using a kind of AI to reduce the size of images. But what are we trying to do? We're trying to build a portfolio of products. And so one of the things that is good for companies is to have not just one. So compaction, we all know of, I think. NERCOM, already talked about that. And now this neural compaction. It's all pieces that if somebody said, look, I've got lots of horsepower in my computer, I really care about making this as small as I possibly can do it. I don't mind extra latency. I don't mind extra computing. Then neural compaction is a better choice for them. So, and sort of like, let me answer the question of why would you go to all these things, have all these things? Well, again, you can offer somebody a solution. It says, well, my need is this. Okay, instead of one trick pony, we can do more stuff. We can put more things on a chip. And that increases the markets, the size of things we can address, makes us more valuable. And we are a product company with multiple products, and we're the data efficiency company thereby. And that has really, really a lot of value. And so almost done here with this little update, which isn't as little as I was thinking it was, but we're doing about 100K a month in run rate revenue, which if anyone who is one of the veterans from earlier in the year, remember I said was a goal of ours to hit 100K a month by the end of the year. And by golly, we did it. So we are really, really focused on building this. The new goal is to try to get 20 million of contracts by early 2025. I mean, it may not be because it takes a while to get these and get them all set up, but I really want to see at least 20 million contracts by then. And on the commercial side, one of the cool things about this product I was talking about, this combined product with Viasat and AWS, Viasat is going to sell it for us. They're going to be our customer. And we'll sell it ourselves and we'll have our separate SaaS and so forth. But this combined product is going to be them out there with their much bigger sales force, knocking on doors and talking to, in many cases, a lot of the companies that have reached out to us over time. In Q1, we think we're mostly going to be seeing proofs of concept. And then we're hoping before the end of the quarter to get at least one big customer. And then in Q2, start to get more. And exactly how fast that happens, hard to tell. You get one big one and boom, I think the floodgates open. So let's talk Navy. All right. So with that, I'm going to ask Admiral Becker to dive in and talk to us a little about where he sees the opportunities in the Navy and how we can play.
Well, thanks again very, very much, Charles, for the intro and the chance to talk a little bit about this. I'd say in your image there, you're missing one thing, and that's an image of a satellite. Because while Navy no longer builds satellites large scale, that's a job now moved over to the Space Force. We operate with space every day for just about every mission area, and are still very involved in the space mission and if you pardon the pun, the space. And I wanted to bring that up because the reason that communications are so important for us is not for the sake of communications, but for the missions that they support. And unlike many of our sister services, the distances at which we operate make efficient and effective communications so important for us. As a young officer, and maybe even before that, as a midshipman, I can think back to our communication speeds being 9.6. I'll leave you in the audience to figure out what the unit was when I say 9.6 was our speed. But that was what we used in order to send the information to exercise command and control. Now roll film to today and to the complicated kinds of machinery, the complicated kinds of sensors, the complexity of the modern battle space. And you can imagine the volumes of data that are necessary to move around our operation space from the Indo-PACOM regime back to the continental United States and back out again. Well, how can we do that? Well, one way is we use a lot of satellite bandwidth. But if we could find a way, and I say we still, it's hard to give up that pronoun after 33 years in uniform. If we could find a way to make the use of our bandwidth, our existing bandwidth, much more efficient when we're transmitting data that are known data structures, then we can use what we have to transmit even more information, which means we can move our decision speed faster than those against whom we might compete. And speed is life. As an aviator, we used to use that phrase all the time, speed is life. Well, in the speed of decision-making, speed is life. And so when we look at how we could take the increases in efficiency for things like data about the engines that run that destroyer on the left side of that video, or information from submarines that are using extremely challenging sized bandwidth to push out their information that they need to send out and receive.
Think about, you have to talk to a submarine that's under the water, right? It's not as simple as you stick up an antenna.
It is not. It's very complicated, but although the submarine service is known as the silent service, and for those of you who might watch a particular football game this weekend, you might see that term on one side's helmets. There are still communication requirements. And of course, in aviation, being able to operate aircraft, whether manned or unmanned aircraft, together has a multiplying effect that is hard to underestimate. And therefore, being able to move sensor data, communications data, and messaging data across the networks that we have more effectively is extremely important to naval missions. If I think back to my previous command, the current commander, the admiral that relieved me, Admiral Doug Small, he has been added an additional responsibility as the direct reporting program manager, which is a fancy term, meaning he's working directly for the #2 guy in the Navy, the Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Research, Development, and Acquisition, to deliver Project Overmatch for the Department of the Navy. There's not much that you can read about Project Overmatch, but what you can indicates that it is the way that the Navy will operate as part of the joint force. And it's all about connectivity. Connectivity in a domain where others might want us to not be so connected. That's why I get excited about what the impacts are that both NURCOM for our sensors, but also the compaction that AtomBeam can bring and the mission impacts it can have across our missions from under the surface, on the surface, in the air, and outside the atmosphere.
So it's up to you how much you want to follow all this, the slides, but.
Well, I just say that's like one of the coolest logos of the Navy right there.
Pretty cool, yeah.
I guess I might have put that logo in place on my
back as possible.
We'll probably take some questions about NAVWAR. For context, NAVWAR is akin to the other systems commands in the Navy: NAVC, Naval Sea Systems Command; NAVAIR, Naval Air Systems Command; and then our Supply Command and our Facilities Command. But working together, NAVWAR, NAVAIR, and NAVC deliver the warfighting capability that the Navy needs. And because nothing operates alone, what we AtomBeam can deliver for the missions that NAVWAR is responsible for delivering, will also have an impact on our Sea Systems Command and our Air Warfare Systems Command's capabilities, their products, and what they are able to deliver for their customers, if you will, for their missions. And I'm kind of excited about not only being able to share with my colleagues at times and in places from NAVWAR, but also throughout. For instance, as I mentioned earlier, if you consider the very complicated machinery spaces that exist today inside our destroyers, our cruisers, our nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, they are generating an enormous amount of information. And I'll speak specifically to the Gerald R4 class of aircraft carriers, the first new class of aircraft carriers designed since the 60s. I remember seeing in a facility back in Norfolk, I guess it was circa 2003 or so, parts that were getting ready to go into the Ford. They were pumps and other devices, and each one of these items had fiber optics coming out of it. And I thought, what's that all about? Well, obviously the answer is gathering all of the machine data, bringing it to central location. So it's a much faster, more efficient way to operate remotely. Well, all those data are being collected. What does that enable an engineering department to do? Well, it's the same thing that GE does for United Airlines or American. Every engine you see hanging on a 777 is gathering data, sending it back to GE, so GE knows how to take care of the maintenance of that engine. And when that maintenance has to happen, when that engine has to be taken offline, et cetera. If that engine's not turning, if it's not lifting an aircraft, that aircraft is not generating revenue for the airline, that engine is not generating revenue, so they've got to keep it operating as much as possible. Well, rather than taking engines offline, whether for aircraft or for ships, when you can move the machine data and study that, you can understand when that maintenance needs to occur, rather than by a schedule, by what's happening from the data in that device. If you can send more of that information back to people who need to assess it and analyze it, you can become that much more effective and efficient in your maintenance. Well, that's exactly what AtomBeam can do with compaction. It can take those known kind of data sets and compress it down, and then have a compacted down. Thank you. I got to watch my terminology. Compact it down and enable a much more effective approach to maintenance. Again, I mentioned early on, give a microphone to a naval aviator, you got to watch how long he's going to hold on to it.
This is good. That's just what
this is just one of the areas that excites me about what compaction can do. Break. The more the beyond part of the bed, bath, and beyond in the Navy. There's that I part in C4I, intelligence. I have spent a good deal of my career working sensors and understanding different kinds of sensors from different kinds of places, and being able to move those data to the person who's going to make a decision based on what those data contain. Well, that's been a vexing problem for as long as we've been able to take pictures over the battlefield. With somebody with a box camera flying at a Sopwith Camel. How do you get information to the person who needs to make a decision based on it in a timely way? When we look at NURCOM and what that can provide, I hate to use, well, I'm hesitant to use the term game-changing, but the more I dig into this, the more I think that might be an appropriate term to use. Earlier, Charles, you mentioned the reference to synthetic aperture radar and SAR images and the compression of SAR images that our technical team has been able to deliver. SAR imaging is, it's a very interesting kind of science and a very interesting kind of phenomenology that it delivers. At early stages of that, folks called it blobology because it doesn't really look like a picture. Advances in SAR technology have changed that quite a bit, but still, it's not a picture like you think of it when you look at the ground and you see, trees and cars and things like that. However, what it lacks in the kind of, iPhone picture quality, it more than makes up for in the richness of data that it can assess and assemble from how it senses what that radar is reflecting off of. It's a much richer data set. Unfortunately, that means there's a lot more data, and those data got to go somewhere, and they got to go at some speed. Well, again, the more we can compress those data and deliver more of them to the people who are going to do something with it, the much more effective those sensors become. I'm very excited about what is ahead of us in terms of what we can deliver for compression, and in particular for the synthetic aperture radar sensors. Not just because of what it means for the Department of Defense, but also the opportunities for the commercial TAM. The total addressable market for commercial synthetic aperture radar data is exploding. You look at Capella, Umbra, others, that the National Reconnaissance Office just let contracts for commercial providers of SAR data. This is a big step in changing how our Department of Defense and intelligence community bring data in for the commercial space. But it's not just for the DoD or the intelligence community. That's going to lead to commercial uses and commercial understandings of what SAR data can provide for commercial purposes. We are positioned at the entry point to make those data available to commercial users over the kinds of communication bandwidths that, well, it wouldn't have made sense before, potentially financially, because they'd have to use such a wide bandwidth to get those data. Well, if we can compress them to the size that we've been talking about, you open up a whole new market. Again, I get kind of excited about this. I think it's a great time to be here. I think these are great tools that will have tremendous impact on the warfighter and the commercial market. Thanks, Charles.
Sure. I mean, that was great.
Oh, yeah. Well, again, honoring Saturday's game, the Silent Service, I'll point out that of all the systems that the Navy is acquiring today, the number one priority, the number one program in importance is in support of the Navy's number one mission, which is the mission of strategic deterrence. Strategic is one of those code words that means existential, right? It means the nuclear triad. And the Navy's ballistic missile submarine force is what we refer to as the survivable leg of that triad. We are recapitalizing our submarine force with the Columbia-class submarine program. And I'll just say that I can envision ways in which we can have an impact on the mission for that program. And as the number one program in the Navy, it also has the number one access to funding.
Not an insignificant point. Thank you. And
I mentioned Project Overmatch earlier. It is the Navy's contribution to the Joint Command and Control architecture that the Department of Defense is putting together in conjunction with the Air Force and with the Army.
Right. And to give everybody a sense of what is the case now, the most prevalent thing out there, the communications that different platforms use to talk to each other, is Link 16.
Link 16 is one of those communication architectures that relies heavily on what I mentioned earlier, which is, in essence, known styles of data sets, which is something for which our compaction strategy is tailor-made. And being able to push data and other different formats for data, I'll say it that way, over Link 16 is extremely important, not only for Project Overmatch, but also because our friends and allies have equipped many of their navies, air forces, and armies with Link 16. So if we are able to provide mission improvement to U.S. armed forces equipped with Link 16, we automatically have a market with our friends and allies around the globe who are flying with Link 16 terminals.
And Link 16's data rates are on the limited side. It's 1980s technology. And so I think it's 2457 and 114 kbps. Which, if anybody remembers the era of putting your phone on a gadget, and that's how you would go onto your AOL account. That's what we're talking about. So, all right. So, anyway, so
Oh, there's a picture of the Mobile User Objective System, or MUO satellite. I was
right.
privileged to launch 4 of those out of
Ah.
the 5 that are in space today at geostationary geosynchronous orbit, 22,000 miles out. But the Navy is the biggest consumer because we can't trail a piece of fiber behind a ship.
Right. Right. So, and you even have a little hat on it, which is nice. All right. So this is the last slide, just to know. So anything you want to talk about is good.
Well, I think I've covered a lot of what I see as the opportunity, what I see as the basis for my optimism for how AtomBeam can grow, but more important for me personally and professionally is what it means for the mission. My son is a sailor, and he will deploy on the USS John F. Kennedy when she is commissioned. She is the second carrier for the Gerald R. Ford class. And so I'm somewhat vested in the future of our Navy's capabilities. What you see there, bow on, is a piece of capability that nobody else can match. Other navies in the world have aircraft carriers. No one has that kind of capability and the ability to project presence as we do. And so as we consider yesterday, December 7th, I take a moment, take a pause to think of those who went before me. But also I'd ask that those of you who are so inclined to feel a great deal of pride in your Navy and the sailors and Marines that populate your ships at sea, they are the finest Navy in the world, and they are doing you proud.
Well said. Yeah. So, yeah, and I should mention too, so my son is a midshipman Marine option at Tulane right now. So I've got my vested interest. So
there we go.
But just to be clear, like a long time ago, I was a lieutenant. This is about 12 steps above where I was. So anyway, so with that, I think we will move to some questions if that works.
Yep. And the overall consensus, it sounds like everyone here in the audience was amazed with the presentation. Had a couple comments here about it. Awesome. First question here is for Admiral Becker. How often in your tenure have you seen the emerging technology with AtomBeam's potential?
Well, I want to make sure I answer the question that was asked instead of maybe the one I want to answer, or I'll start with the one I want to answer.
Yeah, do whatever you want.
I have on occasion seen kind of game-changing technologies that I think that are really capable of making a shift. One of them I saw was the idea of being able to launch a satellite from a rocket launched from a 747. I thought as a space guy, that was going to be a game-changing capability. It hasn't worked out. What AtomBeam can do for data compaction and for image compression is potentially equivalent to that. Because what it means is we can move, again, I go back to the speed of decision. If you can operate inside the observe, orient, decide, and act, or OODA loop of your potential adversary, if you get inside of that, you can control the battle space. And the best fight to win is the fight you don't have to fight. So if you can control that OODA loop, you can determine what happens in the battle space and influence that. And one of the ways you do that is to be able to react faster and be able to predict more accurately what that battle space is going to look like. One of the ways you do that, especially at sea, is being able to move information around. And if we can change how efficiently and effectively we, the Navy, the Department of Defense can move information, then we start to make that OODA loop shorter and shorter and tighter and tighter and tighter, and make our commanders much more capable, which ultimately will have a very positive effect that some of us here might feel personally.
And then what job board are you hosting job openings?
We are not yet, but I think when we get a little more money on board, I think I don't know yet, but I would say ask the question in another couple of months, because then I think we'll have some sufficient capital that we can, get serious about bringing in more folks. I'm not saying we're not bringing in any more, but we are going to have to get a lot bigger quick.
And then if you were to do a Reg A plus, would you be able to share sales pipeline value progress along with DoD contract progression? It would probably help add significantly to the valuation. How many months as a range do you anticipate the pipeline deal average to be?
Well, I mean, it's going to vary a ton depending on the stage. So today, it's going to be a longer pipeline. Somebody who's trying it out and testing it and I don't have a lot of references to hand them and all that. Different deal than call it later in 2024, and you have 4 or 5 big companies using it. That's the goal. And you have we've worked out all the kinks, and so it'd be pretty much okay. So I'd like to use this. All right, here, go through this pick list, and I'm using this kind of gadget and this kind of chip and this kind of whatever, and it's all like set up, and then configures it, and and it's in your thing, and you're up and running. So I think on that basis, it's going to go from months to, I mean, I would hope a week or 2 to get everything set.
Awesome. And then great long business plan. Will the chip portion at the later stage of development weigh on VC capital, or is another potential DoD contract?
Well, I mean, it depends. If the DoD will pay for it, I'm happy to have them do so. And so I will tell you that getting an ASIC done, that's not that heavy. We can probably get a really good working prototype done in a $1.2 million contract. However, to put it into an ASIC, that's a whole.
I think you meant FPGA in the front end there.
Oh, FPGA, that's what I meant.
Right.
All right, what we've been working on. So the FPGA is programmable. If you make a mistake, you can fix it. With ASICs, which I was talking about before, you can't. That's like a $20 million exercise to do an ASIC. So in a couple of years. So, but if the DoD wants it enough, then 20 million that's not at all a showstopper for that kind of thing.
Or if some of our commercial customers see that they can deliver this service as a differentiator for their service, that might be a very small investment for them to make in order to win the chunk of their TAM they're going after.
Absolutely. So we already have partnerships with Intel and with NVIDIA, and there'll be more on that front.
All right. And then, hello there, I wanted to invest into AtomBeam, but I am unable to use Start Engine because I'm based in Ireland. Is there another way I could still invest in AtomBeam before December 28th?
Well, I would say write me because I need to dig into that question. So send me an email, charles@atombeamtech.com, TECH, atombeamtech.com. And I will try to figure out the answer to that question. I had thought you could if you were non-US, but it seems like you can't. So I'm not sure what the deal is, but I'll figure it out. And if you write me, I'll let you know.
Then it sounds like the upside for annual revenue with just the US military is more than 100 million annually. If AtomBeam gets multiple phase 3 contracts, is expansion via NATO after US contracts an opportunity, or is that intertwined within the US agreements?
The answer is it depends. As we move forward with different use cases, I think we'll be focused. I'll say it this way as an advisor. I think I would look for places that are focused inside the U.S. Joint Forces first, and establish that track record, because then it makes it a much easier lift to point to our friends and allies, and particularly our NATO partners, that this is what the U.S. is using. And we can demonstrate that it's being used and used successfully in U.S. Armed Forces, and then that becomes an easy conversation to have.
Right.
How can we invest in AtomBeam?
Well, I mean, the best I could do is what I talked about originally, which is expand it to the extent that the SEC allows us to this round, and then launch a new round, which we're trying to do early as we can, which is realistically probably late Q1. But I would tell you, you know, I have a personal inclination that I really like the idea of crowdfunding. I like having guys, you know, opportunities like this available to regular people instead of, you know, people like I went to business school with at Stanford. So at any rate, but I just tell you, you know, that we're doing the best we can, and we'd love to take your money if we need it, and we'll do it as fast as we can.
Put your money to work, I think is what you mean.
Well, yeah, okay, that's what I meant, right.
Admiral Beck, what's going to be your role in 24 and 25 to help move AtomBeam forward, besides obviously making key introductions?
Well, I'd like to think that introductions is really an important but a small part of what I can contribute to AtomBeam's path ahead. I spent about the first third of my career as an operational aviator flying from carriers, and then the next couple of decades as an acquisition professional. And so I understand the department's perspective, I believe, or at least certainly made a good run at it. How we think about acquiring new capabilities, and then working with industry from the government side, both as a program manager, and then as a one-star admiral, as a two-star admiral. I've also been in industry. I was the president of a small company, and so I understand it from that perspective as well. So I like to think that what I can bring to the team here is that perspective in laying out the strategies towards the goal. We have an objective, all right? What is our strategy to achieve that objectives, and then how do we set particular goals along the way? Laying out that kind of specific and particular plans with the informed perspective of my experiences, I think is the best way that I can help the team here, and then measure that progress. And then also, well, you know, Charles, it may have been a bit ago, but you spoke Navy then, you still speak Navy now, and there is a certain amount of, communication that is,
Right.
it becomes very, very natural. And so I found myself, when I first met Charles, being very at ease in our very first conversation. And as we build a relationship, I know that I have no doubt that if I see something from a different perspective, I have no problem and I will have no problem in sharing that with Charles,
right,
in the same way that one would do so in a Navy squadron, which is a particular kind of tough environment, no holds barred.
Yeah,
But at the end of the day, still friends and still sharing a cup of coffee together. So I'm excited about that as well, being able to partner with Charles and provide him a sounding board external to the company, but one that shares similar experiences.
I should mention one quick thing. Now, I can see we have a lot of questions posted. We're not going to get to them all, obviously, because there's only a minute left or less. So I would suggest it's really helpful for everybody. If you go to the Start Engine site, you go to discussion section and you post the question there, because then everybody can get the benefit of, I mean, okay, if it's specific to me, yeah, it's just email me, but a lot of people can benefit that way because you just put it in there, you type it in, it's really simple.
Yep. You beat me straight to it, Charles. I was going to say the same exact thing.
Okay, there we go.
No worries. Thank you so much, Charles. Thank you so much, Admiral. This has been a wonderful presentation. To those who attended, thank you very much. And who wasn't able to attend, don't worry. Like always, we'll have a replay in the next couple days. So be on the lookout for that. Charles, is there anything you wanted to say before we signed off here today?
Yeah, and just to reinforce one thing you just mentioned, which is AtomBeam has a YouTube channel. So if you type the words in Google AtomBeam YouTube, then you'll take you to the channel. And what we do is we post the webinars, we post, videos about this and that. And so I would highly recommend anybody go there. And if you subscribe as, hey guys, cool, you guys subscribe, like to say every time, but then you'll be notified when it's there. But so there is a functional reason, and we don't badger anybody with anything. So I'm not saying YouTube won't, but I won't.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
Right.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Hope everyone has a good rest of their weekend.
Yep. Thanks very much.